I've spent my entire career in front of the camera, I think, doing two things. One of which, well, both of which I think I've succeeded. I've tried to surprise people. I've tried to do something unconventional that they don't expect. I've tried to say or do something, somewhere, which makes people sit up and think, ooh, that was funny, let's say, or that was amusing, or what a sense of humour, which of course happened in the Bond movie, The Man with the Golden Gun. Scaramanga has a great sense of humour. It's lethal, but he has a sense of humour. So, not an ordinary thug, you see. There's the difference. Unexpected, unconventional. Same thing in Theatre of Death. You think this man is a ruthless tyrant in the theatre. You think he is, but I surprise people by not being the character that they think I am. I have quite definitely proved a great many people wrong. The people who said, you're too tall to be an actor, you're too foreign-looking to be an actor, you only do horror movies, you can't escape from Dracula. Some idiot put that in the paper on Sunday, like they never write about Sean without referring to him as 007, or Roger Moore, always. So you ignore it, and simply isn't true. It doesn't annoy me. I think it's pathetic. So I'm proving people wrong all the time. The person who wrote that bit in The Independent on Sunday, last Sunday, as a headline to the piece, they said Christopher Lee cannot escape the curse of Dracula. The person who wrote that is never going to be able to escape the curse of being thought a complete idiot for having written something like that, because it isn't true. And the proof is on the screen. I have been on record, and I continue to say it, that, in my opinion, in the case of the Dracula films, because there was this demand, they just kept going. What happened was a degeneration of quality. And as far as the Dracula stories were concerned, I became progressively disenchanted. I said, look, this has nothing to do with Stoker's book, nothing to do with Stoker's character. You're writing the story first and trying to fit the character in afterwards, which is exactly the wrong way of going about it. And, as I've said before, and I can repeat it again, because people concerned are no longer with us, I turned down all but the first two. There was a gap of 7 or 8 years between the first and the second, in which I didn't speak at all. Then I made, whatever it was, 4 more, I think, 3 or 4 more, I can't remember, over the years. Every single one of those stories I turned down and said, no, I will not do it, I don't like the story, it's nothing to do with the character, and I don't want to play the part anymore. I can't do anything more with it. What happened every single time that no got back to Hammer was I got hysterical telephone calls. You've got to do it, you've got to do it, you've got to do it. And I said, I don't have to do it, and I don't want to do it. And I'm not going to do it, but you've got to do it, you have to do it. You must do it. And I said, why? Which perhaps was a foolish question. The answer I got was, because we've already sold the film to the American distributor with you in the role, otherwise they weren't interested. And, here comes the crunch, think of the people you'll put out of work if you don't do it. So what do? Am I going to be held responsible for putting 90 to 100 people out of work? Actors, actresses, directors, writers, producers, technicians? How could I? So I did them. And that is the only reason why. It certainly wasn't for money. Well, some of the films have been accepted as classics, I gather. I wouldn't have thought the last two, but maybe the other 2 or 3 were obviously entertaining, were very well accepted, very well received, and the audience enjoyed them. I have to be honest and say that I didn't.
Take a look at yourself. Look at that makeup. It's ridiculous. That eyeshadow, it's grotesque.
Strange film, Theatre of Death. Strange film, interesting film. What really appealed to me about it at the beginning was the fact that the director, Sam Galoo, informed me that he had sung tenor with Toscanini. So, of course, off we went into opera right away. We sang at each other all through the film. It might have been a better movie, actually, but we did. And so we had very much in common, and it was all opera and singing. And he would sing something, I would sing something. It's amazing, we got my work done. I have nothing but happy memories of it, of the company, my company, in the film, all lovely people. Dear Jenny Till, a beauty, who went on to work for Cameron Mackintosh. That was the last time I saw her, some years ago. And Lelia Goldoni, I think. And of course, Julian Glover, who's one of our major actors now. Julian has not only done some very big pictures, played some major roles in them, but of course he's done an enormous amount of work as a major classical actor in Shakespeare, in the theatre, which is more than I've ever done.
You surprise me.
Flicker of lights, puff of smoke. There you are.
Don't tell me you've seen that too.
Dear Evelyn Leigh, now there was a legend. Or Boo Leigh, as she was called, I have no idea why, was one of the great figures of the English theatre. She was an excellent actress. She was in a lot of light comedies. She was in a lot of musicals. Absolutely enchanting. And a legendary name. I mean, really, a legendary name.
Do you think it wise to place so much responsibility on someone so inexperienced?
My dear madame, if I didn't think so, I wouldn't have done it.
I was very much in awe of her, as anybody could understand. And she was very sweet. And she must have been then in her middle 80s, or thereabouts. But you wouldn't have known it. Because word perfect, full of energy, lovely, lovely lady.
I think most of the credit should go to our director, Philip Jarvis.
And I played this rather bizarre character. I played a few. And he's the director of a theatrical group who bullies people, who's a bit of a tyrant. And he scares the life out of his company by apparently threatening them, all sorts of things.
I suppose you realize I could ram this right through your delicious little stomach, do you?
Please, you're hurting.
And, well, of course, he is a red herring, a very acceptable one. So everybody thinks that he is the killer. I don't think I'm giving anything away when I say that he isn't. Yes, the Lyric Theatre, Hammersmith, indeed, yes, where the theatrical scenes were shot there, yes. It was a very popular theatre, and it put on superb productions. I used to go and see Donald Wolfett and his company in the Lyric Hammersmith.
He used to say that the theatre of death was his life. And indeed, why not? After all, the theatre is full of paradoxes. I intend to make it my life also.
Grand Guignol, of course, I never saw in Paris. I wouldn't have been allowed to. I was too young. Because although I did see the last public execution in France in 1939, it was because somebody took me, a friend of my family's, and I turned away at the crucial moment, but I shan't ever forget that. Grand Guignol, Big Guignol, was of course the theatre of horror, of real horror, not just of death, but the most appalling things happened. And some very distinguished actors and actresses played in Grand Guignol, both in France and elsewhere. The theatre was in Paris, and people flocked, you know, right, rather like spending the whole night in the Chamber of Horrors in Madame Tussauds. Can you do it? Will you survive it? Will you remain sane? People fainting in droves, I know that's true. Because I've read a lot about Grand Guignol. I've read about some of the sketches they put on. I've read about some of the things they did. Absolutely appalling, putting people's eyes out with red-hot needles and things. I mean, you can imagine this in the 30s. Far worse than anything that's ever been seen on the screen. Terrible scenes of torture, blood all over the stage, mutilation, decapitations, everything. And this was done in public, in the theatre, in Paris. And people flocked. So tastes haven't changed all that much. There's a book coming out. The title of the book is The Authorized Screen History of My Films. It's written by Jonathan Rigby, who has done a superb job. Has all my sympathy when you look at some of the films that he's had to look at. And the foreword, and this I understand is a first ever, is by George Lucas.